first remark that we found a almost perfect, beautiful day here in Washington, D.C., and we walked up along this way, and Mr. Wilders and I and Louis Gohmert went over and looked at the tulips that I guess that the Capitol Hill people planted to welcome a member of the Dutch Parliament here on the Capitol grounds in Washington, D.C. And been looking forward for weeks for Mr. Wilders to arrive here, because he brings with him a message of the experiences they have had in Western Europe and the impact it has on their culture, on their economy, on their national security. He's a man who has, I think, been bold and confident and factual in presentations that he has made about the risks that Europe, Western Europe in particular, is going through, and the changes in their culture and society because of it. And I've also been his guest over in The Hague a little over a month ago, where not only was I down to the floor of the Dutch Parliament, but up in the gallery as well, where I heard him argue and debate on the floor of the gallery in the same fashion that perhaps he's heard me do that within the last day here. And I think it's important for us to expand and build our networks across the ocean, and to tie together the anchor that is Western civilization, which is the core of our culture and civilization, that carries forward all kinds of values, our religious values, our rule of law, our free enterprise economy, our common national defense. And we need to strengthen Western civilization, strengthen our bonds with each other. And not only has Mr. Wilders been outspoken on these issues, he's been under guard for the last 10 years. His life has been threatened for speaking out. And in Europe, they prosecute for telling the truth even. They call it hate speech, and the truth is no affirmative defense for uttering something that's objectively true if there are enough people that line up and say it hurt my feelings. And that's something that's astonishing to us here in America. He is grateful for our First Amendment and the freedom of speech that we have, and I wanted to make sure that we facilitated an opportunity for a member of the Dutch Parliament to speak freely here in front of the United States Capitol, which is a very symbol of the freedom of Western civilization for the world. He's also written a book called Marked for Death. I read every word of it, and I recommend it to you all. And but before we turn to Mr. Wilders, I'd like to introduce my great friend from Texas, who has a few things to say about this topic. And we just came from the Judiciary Committee, where we're served together. Louis Gohmert from Texas.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you for coming out today. Thank you. It is such an honor to be here with one of the bravest people I've ever met. And, you know, there's some people say there's a fine line between being brave and being stupid. Well, our guest is not stupid. He understands the risks he's taken. And I think it is appropriate, and I appreciate my friend Steve King setting up this press conference, but it's appropriate that we be right here with the Capitol Dome in the background. It appears the best information is that the fourth plane that had been hijacked by radical Islamists on 9/11 of 2001 would have wanted to come take out this dome, this symbol of democracy. Because people here, for most of our history, not so much in recent years, but for most of our history, have believed that there was a place for the First Amendment, not prohibiting the free exercise of religion, for example, and also providing freedom of the press, freedom of speech. But during this administration, we've seen an all-out assault on freedom of religion, freedom of press, and if you wonder, you shouldn't. I mean, it was this Justice Department that decides to go after reporters. You say the least thing they don't like, they're coming after you. They may get your phone records. So there have been real encroachments on our freedom of speech here in America. And if you go back to the founding of this country, go back to the revolution itself against England that had become so dictatorial, one of the common expressions, rallying cries during the revolution, usually attributed to Voltaire, whether he said it first or not, the line was, "I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." In more recent times around here, and especially in Europe, especially with radical Islam, the line might more be like, gee, I disagree with what you say, and so I'm going to get you fired. I'm going to try to keep you from ever having a job again. We're going to go after your family and make their lives a living hell. We're going to destroy you every way we can in your own community. We're going to make you just toxic everywhere you go. Well, that's not what America was founded on. That's not the way in which America became what I believe is the greatest country in the history of the world. Those freedoms in the First Amendment mean what they say. And there are those who say, gee, my freedom of religion allows me to end completely your free speech. That is not constitutional. It may be under Sharia the way some interpret it, like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He made that clear in his pleading that was made public. But it is not in the United States of America as long as we have a Constitution and at least some people in this Capitol that will stand for the Constitution. So I am pleased to stand here with my friend Geert, and I admire his courage to continue to say in a place where they made it criminal, as some are trying to do here in the United States, to say anything that they find offensive. In my prior life as a judge, if someone were to come in a court case and say, we wrote an article or did a cartoon that indicated that radical Islamists were violent, and then the evidence is radical Islamists then killed the people for saying they were violent, that would be in the legal realm here in America called res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. These people said radical Islamists are violent, so radical Islamists killed them. It's a lay-down case. And we need to stand up for people's right to express their views freely, and that means somebody may be offended time to time. That used to not be a crime in America. And I hope that we return to the day when freedom of speech is just that. So I'm proud to be here, and I appreciate you translating this up. Thank you, Steve.
Congressman, do you stand by Wilder's statement that Islam is an ideology of a retarded culture?
Questions in a little bit. I know you don't want to follow the rules.
Available.
Wait, we'll get to it.
I'd like to next introduce my good friend from Pennsylvania. He's an American patriot, an American warrior, an American veteran. He represents the region of Pennsylvania, including the hallowed ground of Gettysburg, where the reunion of the Union was actually decided. And I've been there to visit him in his district, and I've watched him as he operates in his Congress, and he is a man who stands on patriotic principle every time. Scott Perry.
Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. Listen, I'm very simply here to stand up for and stand with my colleagues and my new friend from the Netherlands for free speech, not only just in America but everywhere, even uncomfortable speech. And it's important also to let you know that I stand here to help highlight Geert's story and the greater issue that America and the rest of the world needs to be educated about, become informed about, and have informed opinions about. And I do also applaud his courage and his conviction for, again, talking about things which many people, some people find uncomfortable, but it is critically important to democracy here and democracy and freedom around the globe that this discussion be had. And I just applaud the gentleman for putting this event together, and the gentleman for his long-standing courage for what his beliefs are. So I thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Now I'd like to introduce a member of the Dutch Parliament, Mr. Geert Wilders, the author of the book Marked for Death, one of the strongest voice, I think, on the globe for our Western civilization and for the expansion and the strength of our Western civilization, and also the founder of his Party of Freedom in the Netherlands, the largest organized party in the Netherlands, and the privilege of watching them operate on the floor of the Parliament was something that was precious to me. Mr. Geert Wilders.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Scott. Thank you for inviting me here to the United States of America and the Congress of your most beautiful country. My message is not always a pleasant one. It's a message that gets you, as I did, death threats. I'm on a hit list from Al-Qaeda. The Pakistani Taliban will be killed. Syria, Islamic State has threats on my head. And for 10 years now I live under 24/7 police protection. I've been taken to court. Leftists and liberals call me a xenophobe and a racist, and the extreme right call me a Zionist because of my love for Israel. So it's not easy to speak out against Islam, but somebody should do it, because it's the truth. And my friends and I believe that we should never be afraid to speak the truth. And I believe that the truth is that the Islamic immigration to our free Western societies has proven to be a Trojan horse. The jihadis are among us today. And of course, not all Muslims are terrorists. It would be ridiculous even to suggest that. But almost all terrorists seem to be Muslims today. Only from the United States, if I'm informed well, hundreds of Muslims left for the Middle East. In my own continent, Europe, more than 5,000 Muslims already left for Syria and Iraq to commit terroristic crimes. And there is unfortunately also a lot of support for the people who do that. In the Netherlands, we have today 1 million Muslims out of a population of 17 million. And a poll done by the University of Amsterdam proved that 73% of those Muslims in Holland find people, Muslims who go from Holland to Syria to wage jihad, they consider them heroes. And that is a shocking news. We really did not get too much loyalty back because, and that is another point I want to make, because of this cultural relativism, because of this idea by often leftish and liberal politicians in my continent that all cultures are equal. And I believe that our countries are based on Christianity, on Judaism, and certainly not on Islam. And I believe, and I'm talking not about the people here, but I'm talking about the ideology, I'm talking about the Islamic culture, that Islam has not come to integrate or to assimilate, but has come to dominate, to subjugate the countries and the people where it sets foot on the ground, and certainly where it has become a majority. Look at every country in the world where Islam has become a dominant factor. So I have a few suggestions how to tackle that, and I'm very pleased that besides in my own parliament, to share it with my friends and dear colleagues in the United States Congress. First, I think we should stop and get rid of the cultural relativism. Don't be afraid to be proud of our own Christian and Judaism values and culture. Don't be afraid. We should be more proud of it. Second, I believe we should stop the immigration from Islamic countries. We cannot afford it to have more immigrants from Islamic countries to our free Western societies. And third, which is a very actual problem, is that I don't understand that the government of the United States of America, that actually the government of all European countries have a policy that they don't let people who want to fight for jihad leave for Syria and Iraq, and that they let them return. Both very stupid policies. I believe that if somebody who has made up their mind that they want to commit crimes and leave for Syria and Iraq to wage jihad, and if you stop them from leaving and you do not detain them, you just take their passport, that you have walking time bombs in the streets of your country as you have and as we have. So I say, let them go. We are a free country. If people want to wage jihad in Syria, let them go. But never let them return. I believe that if you choose to wage jihad, to use violence and terroristic acts in another country, you chose not to be Dutch, you chose not to be American, and you should be stripped of your nationality, and you should be stripped of your citizenship. So let the terrorists go and don't let them return. If you don't, you will have an enormous security problem in the United States as we have today in Europe, because all those people that are coming back, let me assure you, even if you invest billions of dollars more in your intelligence agency, you will not be able to follow them 24/7. And I believe those people have proved that they don't deserve to be a citizen of our countries if they choose for Sharia law and fight and kill in any other countries. So this is, at the end of the day, what we should do. And I'm an optimist. Maybe you allow me to end up and to sum it up with a message of optimism. Whereas the political elite, the leaders, my own Prime Minister, your own President and government, and most of the governments in the free Western world are really looking in the other direction, are really ignoring the problem. And every time an atrocity has been done, somebody is butchered or a head has been cut off, our leaders run to your cameras and tell the world that it has nothing to do with Islam, that it has nothing to do with it. And people are not fooled anymore. People are not crazy. People are no xenophobes. People are proud of their own identity. And let me assure you that the people have waken up. In a poll 2 days ago in the Netherlands from a television show, Eén Vandaag, they said it proved that my party was in the polls the biggest party of the Netherlands. And in other countries in Europe, you see as well that a critical party towards the elite when it comes to the freedom of speech, when it comes to the Islamization, are growing. I'm happy to be here and also jealous because, like Steve and Louis said, you have the First Amendment. We don't. I have been prosecuted. I have been acquitted. I will be taken to court again for speaking the truth. And whether you agree with somebody or not, if you don't agree, vote for another party. Start, make your own movie. Start, vote for somebody else. But never take politicians for the use of free speech to court. So I'm happy to be here. You are the lucky guys with the First Amendment, which I wish we had in Europe. Thank you so much, and once again, I'm very proud to be here again in this beautiful country, the United States of America. Thank you so much.
We had a question, we'll take questions now, but a question, do I believe what my friend Geert said, that Islam is an ideology?
Of a retarded culture.
Well, that was not your original question. I do believe that, I know radical Islamists who believe it is, I'm answering your first question, don't keep modifying it, who believe that Islam is an ideology. And I think Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, if you will but read his own writing that he wrote himself, he had the translated dictionaries that allowed him to do it himself. If you don't realize from reading his own writings that he believes it's more than a religion, it is an ideology to him, then you're not reading appropriately his pleadings. For some, I know some Muslims, and I have Muslim friends in Afghanistan, it's a religion to them. And there are Muslims here in America for whom it is a religion. The great thing is, I may not totally agree with my friend Geert on everything, but unlike the most intolerant people in all America, I'm talking about the liberal press, I can disagree with a friend and still care deeply about a friend without wanting to kill him. I would hope that's not a religion, but our president and others have got to wake up to the fact that when someone screams Allahu Akbar and then starts shooting American military in their own secure, what they thought was secure base or post, then it's an act of war by an ideologue that needs to be stopped. There were headlines, I didn't read the articles, I don't need to, by the most intolerant bigots in America, again, the liberal press, that said that we were hosting the most notorious bigot, when actually, if they would but look in the mirror, they would see that the most intolerant people in America are those who claim to be liberal because they want to shut down the free speech of everybody with whom they disagree. I may disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. I knew that when I took an oath to the Constitution in 1978 and went on active duty in the United States Army, I might be called upon to die for people in America, and I was willing to do that, and I knew it included notorious bigots like some in the liberal press, but I was willing to do that. And I'm still willing to do that, to fight for my country and to fight for our rights that are in the Constitution. And I admire anyone who's willing to do that, even when I disagree. I've got a sister who's a Democrat. We go at each other tooth and nail on issues. But we can live together in peace and actually love each other, though some liberals cannot understand how you can disagree and yet still love one another. Well, we can do it.
Any questions for Mr. Builders?
Okay. Yes. Well, maybe I can also shortly react to your question then. Of course, there are differences between Louis, Steve, and myself. I'm not talking about radical Islam. They are talking about radical Islam. You will find more issues that we differ, but we are standing here together because we have in common that we both, all three of us, see a threat of the Islamization of our societies. That we feel that we should emphasize more on the strength and the beauty of our Christian Judeo own culture. That we are not cultural relativists. That we want to give a signal against all those people who say that there are no differences between cultures. That our culture is equal to any other culture. That Islam is not a problem in our societies. That we should get more immigrants from there and more asylum seekers. Let me tell you, that's a bad thing. I'm very much in favor. Look what is happening in Europe now. In Europe today, hundreds of thousands of people come from the North African coast in boats, and they unfortunately drown. The Mediterranean became a sea of death, and that's a terrible thing. The criminal human traffickers, they earn a lot of money. And why? Because people know that if they take such a boat and they achieve to get to the coast of Europe, that they will not be sent back. And I believe in the Australian approach. Australia says we push everybody back. And if you have a bad boat, we give you a safe boat with water, even air conditioning and food. But we send you back, and people will not come anymore. People will not come because they know that it will be unsafe. People will not drown and human traffickers will not come. And let me tell you, 1 million people today are waiting from the North African coast to come to Europe. And the United Nations Special Envoy already says that he wants to redistribute those people through all the Western world, also America. And I tell you, we cannot afford it. Not financially, not culturally, but it's also, as you know, that ISIS made serious threats that they will bring fighters along with the refugees, with the migrants. And we just cannot afford that to happen. We should be sure that our countries are safe, and we are very unsafe today.
The Freedom Party proposes banning mosques and banning the Quran. Do you think the Republican Party should adopt this position?
Once again, there are many differences. I'm not here because I asked for a merging of the parties. It's ridiculous. We work together in the European Union, and we even subscribed and supported a minority government in Holland for years, where we had a lot in common, but even perhaps more not in common. So when it looks at banning the Quran, you have to see it in the Dutch context. We in Holland, we have outlawed Mein Kampf. And I said one day to liberal politicians in my country, here's another book which even has more anti-Semitism and more violence in it than Mein Kampf, the Quran. So if you are consistent, you have to ban the other book as well. And of course the answer was no. Once again, I won't emphasize on the differences. We should be honest. There are many differences, but what we have in common is far more important. That's why I'm very proud to be standing here between two of the, as I see, American heroes, two American members of Congress who have the guts to speak out for those kind of important issues.
Thank you.
Could you be more specific? What are you expecting from this country, from Congress, or the government? What are you expecting from them, and what are you asking them?
Well, I'm not asking them anything. I'm asking them to be so polite to hear me out. They did. They come to my country, as Steve did, and I visit them this week, as I do many times before. So, well, I hope we can work together, like I said, in making sure that the people believe that Islam is not just another leaf on the tree of religions. It might look like a religion. It has a temple, it has a holy book, it has an imam. But as a matter of fact, I believe Islam is more a totalitarian ideology than it is a religion. Maybe you allow me to give you one example. You are not allowed to leave Islam. And this is a token of totalitarianism. You were not allowed to leave communism or fascism in the past either. And you are allowed to leave any other religion. That is a real religion, in fact. So what I expect here is that people join each other in the threat that Islam, or radical Islam as my friends call it, faces for our free society today. And we have to stand up. Somebody has to stand up. And people are fed up of all the politicians who look in the other directions, who call people who speak out in favor of their Christian and Judeo heritage and against the Islamization, and call them bigots or racists, the Zionists or whatsoever. We are not, and we have a growing amount of the people behind us.
One more question right here,
Yeah.
and then we'll wrap it up.
Mostly about the upholding free speech. Can you speak a little bit more about how you feel about some of the policies impacted by your colleagues, if there was any cost around them?
I think that we heard from Mr. Wilders about our First Amendment here and how good that is to protect freedom of speech. And in America, the truth is an affirmative defense. There are other components of the First Amendment, which is the most important in my opinion. That's why it is the First Amendment: freedom of speech, religion, the press, the right to peaceably assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. That's happening. Actually, it's happening now here in many places around the country. No, I don't intend to advocate that we violate anyone's constitutional rights, let alone First Amendment rights. But open dialogue is what's taking place, and they have a different configuration in the Netherlands and across Eastern Europe. I happen to know I had met a lady in Vienna, Austria, who was prosecuted and convicted and fined 40,000, I believe it was euros, for utter true speech that they determined it offended people anyway, and therefore she was convicted. So no, I don't advocate for diminishing anyone's constitutional rights. I think the robust use of our constitutional rights, especially in the First Amendment, the robust use of them gets us to the truth. It helps. And what goes on here, not very far from here, over under those trees, as I walked across there on the day that Obamacare passed, and there were tens of thousands of people that had surrounded the Capitol that day, there was a lady that approached me and said, "You must stop arguing, you must stop fighting, you must compromise and get along and reach an agreement." And it hadn't occurred to me in the same way before, but in that context I said to her, "Did it ever occur to you that because we debate here, because we debate all across America openly, and we put our ideas out on the table and let ideas compete with ideas and ideologies compete with ideologies, that keeps us from being at each other's throats in the streets of America, because we have the verbal ideological debate and contest taking place here, on these grounds, in that building, and all across America." That's what's taking place here today. Yes?
Maybe I can.
About counting radical Islam, and I've heard from your colleague about how he wants to do that. I haven't heard from you how you think the U.S. should be countering radical Islam.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I have a way long speech for that, and I won't give it here. But there are a series of points, and some of it's actually taking place today. But I'll just go through. I'll touch the points and not explain them for their clock reasons. But I believe we need to engage in both defensive and offensive cyber warfare against radical Islam. Political Islam might be another way to understand that. Second is shut off their money flow at its origins, at its transit points, at its destinations. And the third is address the misinformation, hate education that's transferring this belief system into the next generation. And the fourth one is to build an alliance with moderate Muslim countries, especially Sunni Muslim countries today, like Egypt, whom I met with this week, and Jordan and the United Arab Emirates, empower the Kurds, and that kind of allegiance and alliance, coupled with expansion of our human intelligence, so that when kinetic activity is required, that it's well targeted and minimizes the loss to civilians and is more effective than it might be otherwise. If we do that, it's still about defeating the ideology. And I think the person that understands that maybe best in the world is President El-Sisi of Egypt, who gave a terrific speech at Al-Azhar University January 1st in Cairo. That's my answer. And Sarah,
Maybe I can just come back, because I thought about you asking me what to do. What I did in the past is that we took some of your state legislators from the state of Tennessee. We took them to Europe and we showed them around. and we show them what the Islamization meant. We went to Brussels, we went to Antwerp, we went to cities in Holland and other countries, and we saw with our own eyes what is happening in Europe today. So maybe you could say that I'm warning America. Don't think that what is happening in Europe today will not happen in America tomorrow, because it will. And when those state legislators from the state of Tennessee came home, they started to work on anti-Sharia bills. And I believe even some of them were passed. So that are concrete results. I travel around the world. I go to Australia, I go to any place in the world where there are friends, and tell people that we should strengthen all the sounds that are against the Islamization of our society. Because I believe that I'm here standing in a country of freedom, the country of liberty. And trust me, go to Europe and see for your own eyes that Islam and freedom, Islam and liberty are incompatible. Go to any country, any Arab or Islamic country where Islam is dominant, and you will see that Islam and freedom are incompatible. And we should be warned that what is happening there through the Trojan horse of mass immigration from Islamic countries to our societies will also happen here, and I don't want that to happen. Our countries should stay free countries.
That's the last word of this discussion. Thank you very much for covering this. I appreciate it.
It's not a press conference. If we cannot ask questions, it's not a press conference.
You did ask questions.
Yeah, but a lot of speeches and no questions. How long will you stay here in America?
I'll go